Okay, so hello everyone. Welcome to the 8th session with the theme of multilingualism, immersion, heritage, and minority education. I'm Olivia Beggins, and I'm the moderator of the session. We have two presentations today. Each presenter will be giving a 12 to 15 minute presentation, and at the end of the session, there will be a 10 to 15 minute Q&A discussion. I kindly ask that you post your questions in the Zoom chat to be addressed at the end, or you can unmute yourself to interact with the presenters during the Q&A discussion. I will be sending two messages to the presenters at the 12 and 15 minute mark, respectively, to remind you of the time. And this session will be video recorded and shared on our website later. So without further ado, let's welcome our first presenter, Maritza Medina Gonzalez from Michigan State University. The title of the presentation is Teaching American English Speech Sounds to Visually Impaired Learners Using Assistive Technology. I'm going to pull up the presentation.
Yes, thank you. Okay.
1 second.
No worries. Yeah. Okay, so I tell you when you change the slide. Okay.
Okay.
Okay, so thank you. So hi everybody, my name is Maritza Medina Gonzalez. So it's a pleasure to stay here with you and share my thesis project. I'm so glad, really, and many thanks to all the organizers in the Temple University. So I did my master program, my master degree last year in Michigan State University. Yeah, really, so thanks for the invitation because I am not currently a student, but it's a pleasure. So, okay, as Olivia told you, the title of my presentation is Teaching American English Speech Sounds to blind and low vision learners using assistive technology. Basically, I am also a blind person, and for me, always linguistics in general, but phonetics in particular has been something that I consider it's very interesting. At the same time has been terribly inaccessible, you know. So when I started studying linguistics, I found that it was very hard for me to understand the phonetics in general, and in particular, the International Phonemic Alphabet. When I studied in Michigan, I started thinking how to teach phonetics to blind students if really we didn't have any other option, or really we didn't have any option to get this information. So we created with my teacher the tool that I'm going to introduce you today. So we did a study, we did a pilot here in my country in Colombia. But okay, I'm gonna try to show you first the tool and then I talk more about the study. So the next slide, please. So you see that we had basically three main aims. Yes, the idea really with this tool is to improve or to increase the collaborative learning in the ESL or EFL classroom. Yeah, basically we create something that is called ADEPT. So it means Adaptive English Phonemic Tools. Yes. The idea with ADEPT was basically three things. First, to develop a tactile material that could fit with the necessities of blind and low vision students, and also that can be easy to reproduce and could be a support for ESL and EFL classrooms. Yes. So the first was to develop the tactile material. The second aim was to create a companion website that I'm going to show you later. The idea of the website is that could be an educational support, and the website provides the most relevant information about the IPA symbols. In this case, or for this project, we worked with 45 symbols, basically American symbols. So we have 26 consonant sounds and 28 consonant sounds and 17 vowel sounds between monotones and diphthongs, okay? And the last aim was to create or to use universal design for learning and multisensory education to explore the different possibilities that the students have input to receive the information, you know. So basically these were the three most important means, ideas, objects. So it can be the next, please. Okay, you can see an image of the tactile card. So as I told you, the project or the ADEPT has two components. The first is the tactile card that you see. So the next slide, thank you. Okay. I don't know. Okay, if you see, I'm gonna try to show you my camera. Really, I am not very expert using the camera. I don't know if you see this in my hand, but I'm gonna try to describe you what is this, or you can see maybe better in the slide. So basically, the tactile cards, these are 45 like this. I don't know if I'm focused well. I try. The idea with this material is, as you see, so we have some elements in this card. So we have the number, like these are organized in a series, like a series of 45 from 1 to 45. So in this case, you see the number, it's 1.8, because we have three aspirated consonants, P, T, and K. In this case, I hope you can see, is lowercase p with aspiration, yes? So we have the numbering printing letters and the numbering braille too. And also we have the symbol that in my case I can touch. Yes, it's touchable. So I can't understand the shape of the figure because I can touch. And here we have the corresponding notation in Braille. And then we have the name in Braille and the name in printing letters. Why Braille? Why printing letters? Because the idea is that this material can be used not just for blind people, but also for people who can see, yes. Yeah, it's for that we talk about collaborative learning, yeah. You see the colors, green and white, is because for low vision people, it's easier to identify the shape of this figure if they can see the contrast, yeah. So this is the tactile. Basically, we have 4 sets of this material. This is a 3D material, as you see. When we did the proof, the pilot study here in Colombia, we use a material like this. I don't know if you can see. So this is something called swell paper. With the swell paper, we try to make the design. The problem with this material, the swell paper, is that we need a special machine, and also maybe it's not very easy to see, but this material is very frail and the deterioration is very quickly. So we need something that could support that many hands touch, you know, so for that we create this. So basically the first component is these cards. The size, we wanted to make something smaller, but it was impossible to write in Braille and, you know, and accommodate all information in a small design. Okay, next slide, thank you. The second component is the website. I want to show you in some minutes. So the website basically has the information that's most relevant for each symbol in the IPA. Basically, the point and manner of articulation, some sample words, and how to pronounce. And there is a voice record that can the students can listen to understand how to reproduce and understand the sound. So very important. I don't know how much you are familiarized with the use of screen readers, but blind people usually work or manage the computers like me at this moment using something called screen readers. Yes. So we chose in this case something called Just for Windows. Just means job access with speak. This software let us to manage the computer. Yes. So basically, if a blind person wants to navigate in our website, it's very easy. But the problem if they can or they want to type the symbols, it's quite difficult. So before the project was very hard because the screen reader couldn't read anything, so it was completely inaccessible. Thanks to Mr. Okay, I'm gonna mention his name, Mr. Ingleverson in Texas. He created the braille notation and also the scripts that we install in the software and makes possible that I can, in my case, or all blind students can read the IPA symbols. Okay, so next. Oh my God. Yeah, so to type the information, the problem was how to type because we didn't have enough tools, digital tools to type. So basically, we have two possibilities. We can type using the Unicode codes that maybe some of you know. There are the symbols, the combination between letters and numbers that we can use to create special symbols. Yes, it's very important for working with these symbols to download the software that is called Download Seal. Maybe you see in the last slide. And yes, when you download this software, you start you can find in the menu in Microsoft Word the symbols of the IPA. So yes, basically we need first to install this program, and then we can use the Unicode codes to reproduce the information in the screen, or also we can use something, it's an alternative keyboard, or it's called Keyman Desktop, yes? Basically with some commands I can type. So it's amazing because a blind person can make a transcription, you know, and it's interesting because so my students in this study could recognize the shape of the figure in these cards, and also they could get information to reproduce the sound. Next slide, please. Okay, I'm gonna try, we don't have too much time, but so I'm gonna try just to show you a little, I'm going to try to say first the study before showing you the website. So we did a pilot of this material with 21 blind students here in Bogota, in Colombia. They took a pre-test and a post-test, and they received 10 weeks of training with this material. So basically, they learned the most important concepts about phonetics. Yes, what is point and manner of articulation, so what is a vowel, what is a consonant, and they received 10 weeks of training. And using this material and the website, they could improve. So the results that I can show you now, because, okay, we don't have too much sciences, but yeah, basically the pre-test and post-test comparison let us know that really they improve a little. Maybe not the oral proficiency, because it's really very ambitious to pretend to change in 10 weeks the oral proficiency of a person just recognizing these symbols. But yeah, they, at the end, they conclude that they could recognize better, for example, the differences between a vowel and consonant, of, for example, what is a voice or voiceless sound. So obviously that the oral proficiency maybe didn't change a lot, but the comprehension, or there were some improvements in the oral skills, yes? So the next slide. I did the conclusions. Okay. When we finished the study, we did quantitative and qualitative research. Basically, in the quantitative research, as I told you, was a pre-test and post-test that we compared, and was good, the result. And in the qualitative research, we found that really, as conclusion, so to teach English is not hard, it's not difficult, even if you have a disability. Maybe the most important here is to try to increase the idea of collaborative learning in the classroom, and also try to imagine, or maybe to create more didactic material that could be more useful for everybody. Yes, for that universal design for learning is super important. We, in this case, the multisensory education, maybe it's super important. So we have different channels to receive the input. So in this case, we use auditory, we use tactual information, yes. So both channels could be very nice to people comprehend better, yes, the material. So can show, okay, the next slide. So limitations a lot in my studies. Really 10 weeks were not enough. Yes, really was very, I don't know, the students felt that they needed more time to understand better the symbols, yes. And some of them, for example, didn't have computers. Some of them, in my country, yes, English is not a first language, so it's very hard to practice. And sometimes it's very tricky to understand phonetics when you really don't know what is phonetics. So really my plans are to increasing the idea of teaching here in the classrooms phonetics, because it's not common here to have that kind of knowledge. So I'm going to show you very quickly the website. I don't know, can I share a screen? Olivia, I think so.
Yes.
Okay, wait a second. Okay. I'm gonna try to share screen. Give me a second, please. Oh,
no problem. No problem.
Okay. Let me see. Wait a second. Okay. Give me a second. Yes. Okay. I hope you can. And maybe you are listening my synthesizers. Okay, sorry. Okay. Oh my God, wait. Sorry. Oh, I lost the website. No, my God. Okay. I don't know if you can see. I hope so. Sorry. I am not very experienced in these tools. So you can see, for example, the website. I can navigate with my screen reader. Maybe you are listening now. So this has different voices. The way that you are listening is called eloquence. For example, if I want to see, okay, let's see. Okay, this website was designed for blind people, so it's very easy to navigate. So, okay, let's visit a consonant, for example. Here we have, for example, I don't know, for example, this, lowercase. So I open and I have this information. So you can see the typographical description. You see the sequence number chart that all cards, have a number. The phonetic symbol that I can read with my computer because have the scripts. Sample words, excuse me, sample words there. Articulatory description of sound. And here, for example, we have an audio that the students can listen. For example,
lowercase b, ba, a ba, big, beach.
so,
bear.
Okay, as you hear, so we can reproduce the audio and listen how to pronounce correctly this sound, okay? So basically, the website is a very general view if you want to know more about it. So just let me know. Basically, this tool so these two components, the cards and the website that we created, okay? Yeah, so thank you so much. I'm gonna try to stop. Wait a second, sorry. Wait, okay. Okay, so thank you so much for paying attention. I hope I could be clear with my explanation. And yeah, I want to listen to you if you have any questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Maritza, for a wonderful presentation. Now let's welcome our last presenters, Murad Abdenevi and Abdullah Al-Adiani. The title of the presentation is The Effectiveness of Explicit and Implicit Corrective Feedback in L2 Learning.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Martiza, for your presentation. Thank you, Olivia, for the introduction and the opportunity to share our research with you guys. Let me share my screen. As Olivia said, the title of our presentation is The Effectiveness of Explicit and Implicit Corrective Feedback, followed by Explicit Instruction. My name is Murad Abdenevi, a former student of Texas Tech University, where I had my MA degree in Applied Linguistics, and now teaching French and Arabic at St. Anselm Abbey School in Washington, D.C.
And my name is Abdullah Al-Adiani. I'm a former student as well from Tech. And I graduated with an MA in Applied Linguistics from Tech.
Yes, and also we have two other authors because we have limited space. We cannot all present. So we have Sara Aliani and Rulad Hamoud are two researchers in this study. So why this study? What's the motivation here? The motivation is, as you all know, as teachers, we teach languages and we give feedback all the time. We constantly give feedback to students about grammar issues or pronunciation, but the research that we want to tackle is, or the question that we want to answer is, what type of feedback is effective for students? What type of feedback can lead actually to uptake or students noticing their mistakes? And so for this case, we had two independent variable, which are the two types of corrective feedback we're going to tackle, metalinguistic and recast. And the dependent variable is seeing the student performance with these two types of corrective feedback, and also the frequency of the use of this corrective feedback in the research. Also, our innovation or our added value to this study is that we're going to talk about something called flipped classroom. And as you know, with COVID, the need to switch to asynchronous class or asynchronous mode of learning is important.
So here are some key concepts that we may need to explain. So we have implicit corrective feedback, which is correcting mistakes of students without them noticing. And we chose the recast method, which is saying the correct answer right after they make an error, without them noticing or stopping them. And the other type is explicit corrective feedback, which is correcting the mistake with them noticing that they had mistake or they make mistake. And we chose metalinguistic, which is explaining the error they made and with the grammar explanation. Also, we have the uptake, which is the students like noticing or the students which is an indication that the student has noticed the feedback. And the last thing is the flipped classroom lesson, which is a computer-mediated lesson that was created and sent to the students before them coming to the class.
All right, so before we do on this study, also we looked at literature, and the literature, there's a rich body of knowledge when it comes to corrective feedback, right? If you go and type corrective feedback, you will have many articles. But we looked at the ones that really just compared corrective feedback, implicit versus explicit, especially metalinguistic and recast. Researchers disagree about which type of feedback is significant. So, for example, we found Lister, Ranta, Panova, and Lee said that implicit corrective feedback is the most most valuable or most usable or most the one that leads to uptake. On the other camp, we find Illis, Lowen, Erlam, de Graaf said that explicit corrective feedback is more significant than implicit corrective feedback. But also we found some researchers who say there's no difference, like they're the same. If you give students implicit or explicit corrective feedback, doesn't matter, it's the same. It all leads to good learning. But our question is, what type of feedback? We read a lot of material, but we wanna maybe like prove or disapprove or validate a study from another.
So therefore, we have two research questions. The first question is explicit corrective feedback more effective than implicit corrective feedback for language learning? And the second question is, how did learners respond to the implicit versus explicit corrective feedback during the task in the classroom, or what we call uptake?
All right, so we had 14 American learners of Arabic. They were all beginner level, like just beginner Arabic students, maybe first year, first semester Arabic students. We have chosen present tense as a grammar lesson to test this or to carry out this research, because they have never been explicitly exposed to this lesson. So we wanted to use it. That's why we give them a lot of prompts using present tense, simple sentences, simple structure of present tense, and seeing how are they going to deal with this grammatical structure. But also we put it in a communicative way. So there is a part where they will answer questions regarding the just fill in the blanks with the present tense correct conjugation. But also there's a communicative task where they have to use the present tense in a communicative task.
So for the material and design, we use the pre-test, post-test, and delayed post-test design. We started with the pre-test, and then after that, we had a computer lesson and communicative task as treatment sessions. Then right after that post-test, after 2 weeks, we had delayed post-test. So for the pre-test, we had a multiple choice pre-test. It contains 20 questions. 15 questions were focused on the target grammar, which is present tense, and 5 questions were the structure. And the duration of the pre-test was 10 minutes.
Yes, so as I mentioned earlier, something called flipped classroom. And now, as COVID hits, and with this async learning, we all do some form of flipped classroom where we give students an opportunity to access the material in their home, meaning that maybe we record videos, we record audios, we record lessons, and we give them the chance to look at it. For example, in my class now at St. Anselm's, I have students who are online, and then students who are with me in classroom. So it's two things happening at the same time. But now I'm just because when we did this, we didn't think about COVID, but now it makes a lot of sense that, you can actually do a research from home, give students a video, they can watch it. In our case, it was an instructor of Arabic explaining the grammatical structure of the present tense, they watch it, rewatch it. They come to class with questions, with questions or like confusions, and then in the class we worked on it. So yes, so the class was recorded in a research lab, and then the students did not find any issues accessing the document or the video. After, when they watched the video, they came to the class, and then we divided them randomly into 2 groups. Each group communicated for 20 minutes for the communicative task in class, meaning that they will use the target structure present tense in the communicative lesson. The first group contained 5 Arabic learners, 2 male, 3 females, and they received explicit corrective feedback, which is metalinguistic. The second group contained 6 males, L2 learners, and they received implicit corrective feedback. And this communicative task was recorded by researchers for analysis later on.
So right after the treatment sessions, they have a communicative task, or right after the communicative task, they had the post-test. It was identical to pre-test and also was timed to 10 minutes. 2 weeks after the post-test, they had also a delayed post-test. It was identical to the pre and post-test and was also timed to 10 minutes. So in the data analysis, we've been looking for the frequency of 2 types of corrective feedback. And that was after recording, that was by recording the communicative task. The video were analyzed by noticing each corrective feedback that was given by instructors, and each uptake were received from the students. Then we sorted them to specific types of uptake. And also we've been measuring the students' performance of the pre-test, post-test, and delayed post-test. And we used the repeated measure ANOVA and calculating the effect size values.
Okay, now let's go to the results. The results of the frequency of metalinguistic and recast in communicative tasks shows that there is no actually huge difference between the first group, explicit and implicit, in the number of corrective feedback. So they were both given by the instructor a same amount of corrective feedback, like you see here, 15 for explicit and then 16 for the implicit, with a total of 31 corrective feedback. When it comes to uptake, meaning that students notice the mistake, maybe produce the utterance correctly or incorrectly, we also didn't find a huge difference. For example, explicit were 15 uptakes and then implicit 14 uptakes, with a varying degree of differences between students. For example, 8 produced the utterance correctly after getting the feedback. 3 repeated correctly. They just repeated the utterance correctly, and then maybe 1 produced incorrectly. So those are varying degrees that were not very important because we were looking at the frequency, and the answer to the frequency is that there is no difference between the 2 groups. When it comes to the performance in the pre-test and post-test and the delayed post-test, as you can see all with me in the mean, shows that in the pre-test there was no difference between the 2 groups in the earlier performance. However, in the post-test we can see a slight advantage of the metalinguistic group in the performance. And here's the interesting part. We are waiting until the delayed post-test that we saw a great, or the metalinguistic group actually outperformed the recast group by a significant number or amount, which can tell us the conclusion.
So yeah, for the findings from the pre-test and post-test and delayed post-test, there was improvement in overall student scores in both groups in the delayed post-test and post-test. So, however, the metalinguistic group significantly improved more than the recast group in the delayed post-test.
All right, so to answer again our research questions, is explicit corrective feedback more effective than implicit feedback, corrective feedback for second language learning? We found that explicit corrective feedback, metalinguistic, is more effective than implicit corrective feedback. And the researcher who agree with us is Lowen and Erlam, and their finding confirm the study of Ellis, our study. However, it was different from findings of Panova and Lester and Ranta, who said that implicit feedback is more effective. How did the learner respond to the implicit versus feedback during the task in the classroom uptake? There was no significant difference. As I said, the numbers were similar. Learners in both groups received a similar number of corrective feedback, and likewise, they gave a similar number of uptakes type.
So we have a lot of limitations here, and also it is for future works. So the first limitations that we have is the number of students. We had few students that participated in the study, and also we have a gender variety issue. The majority of them like male. Also, one limitation is the use of picture description as the only way to elicit learners' communicative production. Also, it wasn't like a real flipped classroom. It was only flipped lesson. And so in the future, we need to address different moods of corrective feedback also. I think that's all the limitations that we had this study.
All right, shukran, merci. Thank you very much for being attentive in this session. And I look forward to receiving your questions or any comments you have. Thank you.
Thank you both, Marad and Abdullah, for your wonderful presentation. We have about 5 minutes for Q&A. So I want to open the floor to the audience, and let's start from there. Does anyone have any questions for our presenters?
I can ask a question. For like to both presentations were really, really interesting. I think like phonetics are like very hard for like anybody. So I thought that was like a really cool project. And then for Murad and Abdullah, I thought the corrective feedback was interesting. I wondered if you had thought anything, because I feel like as a like I teach Spanish, and I feel like with I feel like it seems like with beginner learners, they tend to kind of need more explicit correction. And then as they like with the more advanced learners, like you can be more implicit. So I wondered if you thought like if the level might have anything to do with it, since it was like a beginning level and the metalinguistic group ended up doing better, like because they kind of needed more explanation, or like do you think that was a factor or not? Maybe you did talk about that and maybe I kind of missed like.
Yeah, I think the level did not really matter, because as you see, like they are all beginner Arabic students. They're all first year students. Like they like barely have any knowledge about the present tense. They all know a few words in Arabic. Like so at this stage, maybe like if we choose like maybe a second or third year Arabic students, maybe at that time we'll think, oh, maybe like advanced learners here, we can pay attention to like their level. Maybe if you have a slightly better level, you can maybe be ready more to do uptake or to receive feedback, corrective feedback more appropriately. But for this type of group, like that's why we wanted like a group who maybe they are not really exposed to a lot of grammar, so that we see like firsthand how they can deal with a lesson that is new to them. And I think, you know, with your students, like you said, you're teaching Spanish, right? Like, do you notice that sometimes, like with your first students, they don't respond really? How would you say? Maybe they don't respond like well to the corrective feedback.
Yeah, I guess that is true. Like you can't go crazy with it because I feel like they are sensitive, so you don't correct everything. But I feel like the noticing is the problem, because I feel like they won't. sometimes in the earlier levels you can do like more subtle like corrections or recasting, but they might not even notice it because they have like, yeah.
Like there's no need to like tell them like about the rule. But that's why like we in our flipped classroom, which we showed them the rules, right? Here's the rule. And then in the study, we noticed that there were some rules were repeated. So just to see like how they're gonna deal with it. So it was like a natural environment where like we want to just see. And maybe I think that your point is really, really important, that like maybe we should just compare two groups, like beginners with intermediate, how they can deal with feedback. But yeah, I hope that answers a little bit of your question. That's a great question.
Thank you.
And I actually have a question for Maritza. What are the future directions for this project, and are there any plans to expand it for learners of languages other than English?
Well, it's a very good question, really. I don't know. Nowadays, everything becomes more complex because the pandemic. Yeah. Because the idea is that this material is to work face to face. You know. Yes. I have tried to teach English the last year, but you know, online is quite difficult. And yeah, I think that IPA is, you know, useful for many different languages. In my case, for example, I speak Spanish as a first language. And for Spanish speakers, definitely the most difficult is the vowels in English because we just have 5 vowels. And yeah, so I chose American English because it's the most common variety here in my country. But yeah, it could be possible to explore another possibilities, maybe to learn different languages, not just American English, but try to look for example, I know that British English, for example, they use another symbols. And here in Spanish, so we have different pronunciations too. It's true. So phonetics is hard for everybody, but yeah, could be a good idea to explore what happened if we try to use this material with another different, with learners of other different languages. But for now, really, to be honest, no, I don't have any other project. I am here just working as an English teacher in a university, and unfortunately, I am in my home country, and here it's very hard, you know, to research. So it's like, or you teach or you research, something like this. So we don't have enough resources for that. So maybe I'm planning on doing maybe, I don't know, another master PhD or something related with linguistics in the future, and maybe I can articulate a project in that way. But for now, no plans.
Thank you so much. I think that would be great. Okay, so does anyone have any other questions, comments for our presenters before we close the session?
I see a question here in the chat. It says, did the student also...
Did the student also learn to write in Arabic, or was it only focused on speaking?
Abdullah, do you want to take care of that?
Oh, yeah, sure. It was only focused on speaking. So we were trying only in a communicative task. So we choose the speaking as an area of interest. Like it was easy to use both implicit and explicit corrective feedback with speaking. It's going to be hard in writing.
Yeah, so we're in the pretest also we give them like the multiple choice because again they're beginners, so we give them multiple choice answers to choose the correct verb. But again, as I said, they were beginners, so that's their first semester learning how to like combine words and write correctly in Arabic. But the focus was speaking more. Because as Abdullah mentioned, the focus was communicative because again, the feedback, and that's a really good question because we can also do a study which we compare the types of feedback that is given written in a written format. But since the interaction was oral and the teacher give them the flipped classroom, we wanted to give them more a chance to focus on the speaking part of it. But thank you, Tiffany, for the question.
Yes, thank you. Anything else before we go?
I just wanted to say to Maritza, like, I feel like your materials could end up becoming used like internationally, and that's like really cool to think. Like, have any teachers like reached out to you to like use them, or like, you know what I mean? Like, I feel like
Thank you so much for your appreciation. So I hope so. The idea is to increase because, now we are just working the symbols, but if I want to improve the oral proficiency, I also, now I'm teaching English, I focus a lot in oral skills. Yeah, it could be nice to think more about suprasegmental material, something more elaborate, not just for teaching the symbols, but also my idea is to increase the phonological awareness in the speakers of the languages, not just in English. So it could be nice to think in the possibility to articulate with, I don't know, more material to teach in a biggest level, the phonetics, not just the IPA symbols. So thank you.
thanks.
So again, I want to thank all of our presenters. You can ask and answer any questions about this session on our Whova webpage. Just some friendly reminders before we go. The abstracts and breakout room numbers. Oh, we did our poster session already, sorry. But the presentations, the poster slides are available when you click exhibitor on the left side of our Whova page. And finally, we have a virtual happy hour taking place at 6:15, and you can access the link either from the agenda or by clicking on community on the left side and locating the event. So I want to thank everyone again, and we hope to see you at our happy hour.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Thank you.